I pulled into the Pilot Travel Center lot around 8:45 at night with my gas light on and $73 in my checking account. The place sat right off I-40, about 2 miles outside Kingman, surrounded by empty desert and truck exhaust. Big yellow sign. Rows of pumps under fluorescent canopies. A few semis idling near the diesel islands. I parked my Honda around the side where the employee spaces were marked off in faded white paint. Killed the engine. Sat there for a second. This was it. Graveyard shift. 11 to 7. 4 nights a week to start, maybe 5 if they liked me. I needed them to like me. Benny had been clear about the deadline. End of the month. That gave me 3 weeks to scrape together first month, last month, and deposit for whatever studio I could find that didn't ask too many questions. I'd done the math twice already. It was tight. Possible, but tight. I grabbed my water bottle from the cup holder and locked the car behind me. The air outside smelled like diesel and fryer grease. Warm, even this late. It was early April, but the desert didn't care much about spring. Just hot or less hot. I headed for the front doors. The walk across the lot gave me too much time to think, which was pretty standard for me lately. I kept running through how I'd ended up here in the first place. 6 months ago, I'd been working day shifts at a distribution warehouse over in Bullhead City. Packing boxes, scanning labels, moving pallets. Decent pay. Nothing special, but steady. Then I started sleeping through my alarm. Not on purpose. I just couldn't fall asleep at night, and when I finally did, it was like my brain shut off completely. No dreams, no waking up to check my phone, just gone. First time I missed a shift, my supervisor let it slide. Second time, he wrote me up. Third time was in the same week as the second, and that was it. They didn't yell or anything, just called me into the office, had me sign a paper, and told me to turn in my badge. I'd tried applying for other day shifts after that. Retail, fast food, grocery stores. Most places didn't call back. The ones that did asked why I left my last job, and I never had a good answer. So when the pilot posting said graveyard, I figured it was worth a shot. Nights felt like my last option. Maybe my only option. I pulled open the glass door and stepped into the fluorescent glare. Inside, the place was bigger than it looked from the highway. Rows of snack racks and coolers on the left. Hot food counter and coffee station on the right. Aisles of trucker supplies in the middle. Logbooks, air fresheners, oil, 5-hour energy shots in about 8 different flavors. Register up front with a tall cigarette cage behind it. 2 people stood near the counter. A guy in a pilot polo, maybe early 30s, and a woman with auburn hair pulled back in a ponytail. Both of them looked tired in that specific end-of-shift way. The guy noticed me first. "You Dale?" "Yeah. Keith." He nodded toward the woman. "That's Brenda. You're right on time. Congrats, I guess." Brenda gave me a quick smile. "You're the new graveyard?" "Yeah. First night." "Fun." She didn't sound like she meant it. "Ethel's in back. She'll walk you through everything. Fair warning, she takes the job seriously." Keith snorted. "That's one way to put it." "She's fine," Brenda said. "Just don't mess around during training and you'll be good." I nodded. Didn't really know what else to say. Keith leaned against the counter and stretched his arms over his head. "So what's your deal? You from around here?" "Bullhead City. Been in Kingman about 4 months." "What made you want graveyard?" Brenda asked. I shrugged. "Schedule works better for me." That was the simplest version. True enough. Keith exchanged a look with Brenda. "Well, you'll get plenty of weird out here. Highway brings in all kinds. Lot of truckers," Brenda added. "Lot of people passing through who don't sleep normal hours. You'll see." "Sounds fine." "Oh, it's fine," Keith said. "Just don't expect boring." Brenda checked her phone. We should grab Ethel. She wanted to start handoff by 9. Keith pushed off the counter. Yeah, I'll get her." He disappeared through a door behind the register. Brenda stayed put, scrolling her phone with one hand. I stood there trying not to look as out of place as I felt. "You worked nights before?" she asked without looking up. "Not really. Warehouse stuff. Day shifts." "This'll be different." She glanced at me. "It's pretty dead from like 2 to 5. Then you get the early crowd rolling in around 5:30. Truckers, commuters, whoever. That part goes fast." "Makes sense." She tucked her phone into her back pocket. "Keith's gonna tell you about all the bizarre customers we get. He likes that stuff. Honestly, most of it's just highway traffic. People get weird when they've been driving too long." "Sure. But yeah, some of it's weird." I didn't ask what she meant by that. Figured I'd find out soon enough. Keith came back a minute later with a woman in her 40s, dark wavy hair, sharp eyes. She wore the same pilot polo as Keith, but hers looked ironed. Name tag said Ethel Mitchell, assistant manager. She looked me over once. Quick but thorough. "Dale Taylor?" "Yes, ma'am." "Ethel's fine." She moved behind the counter and pulled a clipboard from under the register. "You filled out your tax forms already?" "Yeah. Dropped them off last week." "Good. Your shirt's in back. Size large, right?" "Yeah. Grab it after we finish the walkthrough. You'll shadow me tonight, then tomorrow you'll take point and I'll supervise. Day 3, you're solo unless there's a problem." She set the clipboard down and looked at me straight on. "You're going to see the register, the safe, the cigarette cage, and the back office. Pay attention. I don't repeat myself much." "Got it." Keith grinned. "Have fun, man. We're out." Brenda gave me a little wave. "Good luck." They headed for the door, and just like that, it was me and Ethel. She didn't waste time. "Come around the counter. I'll show you the tills first." Ethel walked me through the register setup. 2 tills, 1 active and 1 in the safe for emergencies. The system was older but not complicated. Scan items, take payment, make change. Pretty standard. She showed me how to process card payments, run age verification for alcohol and tobacco, and pull up the fuel console if someone prepaid at the pump. "Most of your transactions are going to be quick," she said. "Coffee, snacks, cigarettes, energy drinks, fuel purchases. You're not here to chat. Be polite, be fast, move on." "Understood." "If someone asks for a bathroom key, it's on the hook under the counter. If someone asks for a shower key, those are tracked in the logbook. Write down their name and what time you gave it to them. We've only got 2 showers, and sometimes people try to squat." I nodded. She moved on to the cigarette cage, pulled a key from the ring clipped to her belt, and unlocked the tall metal cabinet behind the register. Inside were rows and rows of cigarette cartons organized by brand. "Marlboro, Camel, Newport, Pall Mall, those are your top sellers. Everything else, just ask if you're not sure. Don't leave this unlocked. Ever. Got it?" She locked it again and pocketed the key. "Safe's in the office. I'll show you in a minute. You won't need to access it much, but you should know where it is." "Okay." Ethel walked toward the far end of the counter and leaned slightly to look out the front windows. Her eyes tracked across the parking lot. Slow and deliberate. I waited. She kept looking. After a few seconds, she straightened up. "Security cameras are in the back office. I'll show you the monitor. Do we check them a lot?" "I do." She didn't elaborate. The back office was small. Desk, filing cabinet, a monitor showing 4 camera angles. I could see the front lot, the fuel islands, the side entrance, and the back delivery door. Ethel tapped the monitor. "These cycle every 10 seconds, but you can freeze one if you need to. Front lot's camera 1. Fuel is 2. Side door is 3. Back door is 4. I looked at the angles. They covered most of the property. Most. "What about around the side? Like by the dumpsters?" Ethel's expression didn't change. "No camera there." "Why not?" "Wasn't in the budget." Something about the way she said it made me think that wasn't the whole answer. But I didn't push. She opened the filing cabinet and pulled out a binder. Flipped to a page marked Incident Log. "If something happens, theft, fight, injury, whatever, you write it here. Date, time, description. Then you call me or Kathy. Kathy's the general manager. Numbers are on the sheet taped to the desk. Okay. She closed the binder and slid it back. You have a phone? Yeah. Keep it charged. If the power goes out, the registers go down. Backup generator kicks in after about 30 seconds, but you'll want a flashlight app just in case. Has that happened before? Twice last year. What do you do if someone tries to pay during the outage? You don't. You tell them the system's down and they can wait or come back. Made sense. Ethel moved back toward the door, then stopped. She looked at the monitor again. Her hand rested on the edge of the desk. You're gonna be alone out here most nights, she said. There's a button under the counter, red. If you press it, it alerts the state troopers. They'll send someone. For emergencies. Yeah. Has anyone had to use it? She paused. Once. What happened? Guy came in high on something, started throwing stuff, broke a coffee pot. Officer showed up and removed him. That's it? That's it. I wasn't sure I believed her, but I nodded anyway. We went back out to the main floor. A customer came in while we were standing there. Middle-aged guy in a trucker cap. He grabbed a Gatorade from the cooler and paid cash. Ethel handled it. Smooth, quick, no conversation. The guy left. Ethel checked the lot again through the front windows. I noticed she did that a lot, every couple of minutes. Just a glance, like she was counting cars or watching for someone specific. Do you get a lot of trouble out here? I asked. She looked at me. Define trouble. I don't know. Theft, fights, weird people. Sometimes. Keith and Brenda made it sound like Graveyard gets the worst of it. They exaggerate. Ethel locked the register and pulled the cash drawer to check the bills. You'll get strange customers, people who've been on the road too long, people who don't want to be seen during the day. It's a truck stop, that's normal. But, she slid the drawer back in, but you pay attention. You watch who comes in, who's lingering, who's looking at the cameras. You don't assume everyone's harmless just because they buy a Snickers and leave. Okay. And you don't open the side door after midnight unless you can see who's there first. That one caught me off guard. Why? Because I'm telling you not to. Her tone didn't leave room for questions. I let it drop. By the time Ethel finished the walkthrough, it was almost 10. She sent me to the back to grab my work polo and told me to change in the employee bathroom. The shirt fit fine, same yellow and black as hers. I tucked it in and checked myself in the mirror. I looked tired, probably because I was. When I came back out, Ethel was at the register ringing up a woman with 2 kids. The woman paid, grabbed her bag, and herded the kids toward the door. Ethel waited until they were gone, then glanced at me. You're going to work the register for the rest of the night. I'll be nearby if you need something. Sounds good. Don't overthink it. Just do what I showed you. I will. She stepped aside and let me take her spot behind the counter. The store was quiet, just the hum of coolers and the distant sound of a semi pulling out of the lot. I stood there and tried to shake the feeling that I was missing something. Ethel kept watching the parking lot, the monitor, the side door, like she was waiting for something to show up. And I couldn't tell if she thought it would or if she was just making sure it didn't. Either way, I was about to find out why. Around 11:30, Ethel stepped away from the window and reached into her front pocket. She pulled out a small white card, laminated, maybe the size of an index card cut in half. She set it on the counter between us. This location has its own problems, she said. Her voice was lower than before, serious in a way that made the register hum feel too loud. You follow what's written here. Exactly. No improvising, no jokes. I looked down at the card but didn't pick it up yet. These aren't suggestions, Ethel said. They're requirements for this shift. You break them, you don't come back. Understood? Yeah, I said. My throat felt tight. Understood. She nodded once, Then she grabbed her jacket from the hook behind the counter and pulled it on. Kathy's the general manager. Her number's on the emergency sheet by the phone in back. Mine's there too. You call if something happens that's not covered by the card. Okay. Keep your phone charged. Keep the panic button in mind. Lock the side door. Got it. Ethel looked at me for a long moment. Then she looked at the card on the counter. Good luck tonight, Dale. She walked out through the front door at 11:45. I watched her get into a silver Camry and pull out of the lot. Her taillights disappeared down the access road. That was it. I was alone. The store felt bigger suddenly. The fluorescent lights buzzed a little. I could hear the coolers cycling and the coffee maker burbling and the distant sound of a semi idling out by the fuel islands. I picked up the card. The front side had 5 rules typed in plain black text. No logo, no header, just numbers and instructions. 1. Do not accept the radio if offered before 3 a.m. 2. If a teenage girl tries to leave a wallet on the counter after 2 a.m., take it to the back office immediately. Do not open it. 3. Keep 1 salt packet beneath the register at all times between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. 4. At exactly 4:44 a.m., turn off all lobby lights for 1 minute. Stand behind the counter. Do not look outside. 5. If someone knocks on the side door between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m., check the camera first. If you cannot see anyone, do not open the door. I read it twice. Then I kind of laughed, just once. A short, confused sound that came out before I could stop it. It was absurd. It sounded like one of those creepypasta things Benny used to send me back when we first moved in together. Weird rules for night shifts at gas stations or hotels or whatever. People made them up for fun. Except Ethel hadn't been joking, and the card was laminated. I turned it over. The back was blank. I set it down next to the register and looked around the store. Everything looked normal. Rows of chips and candy, coolers full of drinks, the coffee station against the right wall with its stack of lids and straws and napkins. Then I saw it. A rectangle on the floor, outlined in red tape. It was over by the soda fountain, maybe 3 feet long and 2 feet wide. The tape formed a perfect border, bright against the scuffed white tile. I stared at it. I was certain, completely certain, it hadn't been there earlier. I'd walked past the soda fountain twice during training. I'd noticed the napkin dispenser and the straws and the little plastic tray for lids. I would have seen red tape on the floor. But there it was. I picked up the card again and reread it. None of the rules mentioned tape, or a rectangle, or the soda fountain. I looked back at the outlined space. It was empty. Just tile inside the border. My chest felt tight. I put the card in my pocket and walked over to the rectangle. I crouched down and touched the edge of the tape. It was smooth, stuck flat. Not fresh exactly, but not old either. I stood up and checked the soda fountain. 5 dispensers, ice chute, lid organizer, cup stacks in 4 sizes. Nothing weird. I walked back to the counter. The clock on the register screen said 11:58. I pulled the card out again and focused on Rule 3. Salt packet beneath the register between 1 and 5. I opened the cabinet under the counter. Cleaning supplies, a box of receipt paper, a flashlight with a cracked handle, no salt. I walked over to the hot food area. There was a condiment station next to the roller grill with little bins for ketchup, mustard, mayo, relish, and salt and pepper packets. I grabbed 1 salt packet. It was the cheap kind. White paper with salt printed in red letters. I went back to the counter and put it under the register, tucked it next to the receipt paper so it wouldn't slide around. The clock said midnight. I exhaled. All right. I figured I'd just do the job. Keep busy. Follow the rules if anything came up. Probably nothing would. Probably Ethel was testing me or hazing me, or the rules were left over from some prank years ago and nobody had bothered to update them. Probably. I started with the coffee station. 3 pots were less than half full. I dumped them, rinsed the carafes in the little sink behind the counter, and started fresh brews. The machine was loud and smelled like burnt grounds, but it worked fine. While the coffee dripped, I grabbed the cleaning rag from under the counter and wiped down the register. Then the counter itself. Then the glass door of the cigarette cage. I checked the camera monitor in the back office. 4 angles cycling every 10 seconds. Front lot, fuel islands, side entrance, back delivery door. Everything was empty except for 2 semis parked out past the fuel pumps. I went back to the front and faced the candy aisle. Snickers, Reese's, Milky Way, Kit Kat. I pulled everything forward so the rows looked neat and full. Then I did the jerky. The bags were stiff and smelled like pepper and salt through the plastic. The bathrooms were next. I unlocked the men's room with the key from under the counter. It smelled like industrial cleaner and something sour underneath. The floor was damp near the sink. I wiped down the counter, checked the stall for toilet paper, emptied the small trash can. The women's room was about the same. Cleaner, maybe. Less smell. I locked both doors again and hung the key back on its hook. The clock said 12:32. I checked the cameras again. Still nothing. I walked back to the front and looked at the rectangle by the soda fountain. Still empty. I forced myself to top off the coffee station, added lids to the dispenser, straightened the stir sticks. 12:41. I walked down the center aisle and organized the trucker supplies, logbooks, bungee cords, oil bottles, air fresheners shaped like trees. I checked the cameras. I wiped the counter again even though it didn't need it. 12:55. I stood behind the register and pulled the card out of my pocket. Read the rules again. Do not accept the radio if offered before 3. If a teenage girl tries to leave a wallet after 2, take it to the back immediately. Keep 1 salt packet beneath the register between 1 and 5. At exactly 4:44, turn off all lobby lights for 1 minute and don't look outside. If someone knocks on the side door between 3 and 4, check the camera first. If you can't see anyone, don't open it. I put the card back. I looked at the rectangle. It was still just tape on the floor. Nothing inside it. No marks, no stains, nothing. But I couldn't stop looking at it. Every time I wiped the counter or checked the cameras or straightened a shelf, my eyes went back to that red outline by the soda fountain, waiting for something to appear, or maybe making sure nothing did. At 1:11 in the morning, the whole store shifted. That's the only way I can describe it. The ice machine stopped mid-cycle, just cut out halfway through whatever mechanical process it was doing. The cooler fans went quiet at the same time. All of it together. The silence felt hollow. Wrong. I looked up from the counter. There was a man standing inside the red-taped rectangle by the soda fountain. I hadn't heard the door. Hadn't heard footsteps. Hadn't seen movement in my peripheral vision. Nothing. He was just there, standing in the middle of that rectangle like he'd been placed there. My stomach dropped. He was maybe 50, average height, wore a brown jacket that looked too clean for someone traveling this late. His face was bland, the kind you'd forget 2 minutes after seeing it. Forgettable features, forgettable clothes, forgettable everything, except he'd appeared out of nowhere. I glanced at the security monitor on the wall behind the counter. It cycled through the 4 angles every 10 seconds, and I'd been watching it enough tonight to know the rhythm. Camera 3 showed the side entrance. Camera 4 showed the back delivery door. Camera 1 showed the front lot. Camera 2 showed the fuel islands and part of the interior through the front windows, including the corner where the soda fountain was. The monitor cycled to camera 2. Clean tile. Empty corner. No soda fountain visible from that angle, but the space where the man was standing showed nothing. Just floor. I looked back up. The man was still there, standing in the rectangle, holding a road atlas in both hands, one of those big folded paper ones people used before phones did everything. My skin crawled. I stayed behind the counter, didn't move toward him. Rule 1 said not to accept the radio if offered before 3 a.m. But I had a feeling all the rules were about staying behind the counter, about not approaching things. The man walked up to the register. His footsteps sounded normal, shoes on linoleum. He stopped about 3 feet from the counter and held the atlas at chest height. "Where's the nearest Walmart?" he asked. His voice was flat, no accent, no inflection, just words. I pointed toward the front windows. "Back on the highway, head west toward town. Maybe 10 minutes. There's one on the left, past the first big intersection." The man nodded once, then he asked again, "Where's the nearest Walmart?" Same words, same flat tone, same posture. The atlas hadn't moved. His head was angled the exact same way. My heart kicked hard against my ribs. I'd read the card a dozen times tonight. I'd memorized all 5 rules. Rule 1 didn't say anything about questions or directions or road atlases, but it said do not accept the radio if offered before 3 a.m. That implied something would offer something before 3. That implied repetition. A second ask. This was the second ask. I didn't answer him. Instead, I turned to the register and hit the button to start a transaction. My hands moved fast. I didn't scan anything. Just typed in a price from memory. 99 cents. The cheapest thing I could think of. A candy bar or a lighter or something. Didn't matter. The register beeped and showed 99 cents on the screen. I hit the cash button, printed the receipt. The receipt rolled out of the machine and I tore it off. My hands were shaking a little. I grabbed the stapler from under the counter, old, red, probably been there for years, and walked to the condiment station. I pulled 1 salt packet from the bin, the same kind I'd tucked under the register earlier, cheap white paper with salt printed in red letters. I walked back to the counter, set the receipt down flat, placed the salt packet on top of it, and stapled them together. The stapler punched through both with a metallic snap. I slid the receipt across the counter toward the man. He looked down at it. Then he reached out and picked it up. His fingers were wrong. Too long. That was the first thing I noticed. They didn't bend at the right places. There were too many joints, not like extra knuckles, just more segments than there should have been. The movements looked smooth, but watching them made my brain itch. He held the receipt in one hand and tore the salt packet off with the other. The staple popped free and hit the counter with a tiny metallic sound. He opened the salt packet, poured a small amount into his palm, touched it with one finger. I didn't breathe. He stood there for 3 seconds, maybe 4, just looking at the salt in his hand. Then he folded the packet closed, set it on the counter next to the staple, and stepped backward. 1 step. His heel crossed the red tape. The ice machine kicked back on with a heavy mechanical thunk. The cooler fans resumed their hum. The whole store snapped back into normal sound, and I felt the shift again. This time in reverse. I glanced at the monitor. Camera 2 cycled into view. The man was there, visible, standing right where I could see him in real life, just outside the red rectangle now. The feed matched. He turned and walked toward the front door. His footsteps sounded normal. His back looked normal. The atlas was tucked under one arm. He pushed through the front door and the chime dinged. I watched him walk across the parking lot toward the fuel islands. He didn't go to a car, just kept walking, past the pumps, past the 2 semis parked in the far spaces, out toward the access road. Then he was gone. I stood there for a long time, maybe a full minute. My heart was still pounding. My hands were still shaking. The salt packet sat on the counter next to the staple. I picked up the staple and dropped it in the trash. Then I grabbed the salt packet, walked back to the condiment station, and threw it away in the small trash bin there. I checked the monitor again. All 4 cameras, nothing. I walked back to the counter and pulled the laminated card out of my pocket. Read Rule 1 again. Do not accept the radio if offered before 3:00 a.m. Not a word about atlases. Not a word about Walmart. But I'd followed the pattern. Second ask. Salt packet. Stay behind the counter. I figured that was close enough. I put the card back in my pocket, checked the salt packet under the register to make sure it was still there, and looked at the clock on the register screen. 1:17 a.m. 6 minutes. The whole thing had taken 6 minutes. I grabbed the cleaning rag and wiped down the counter even though it didn't need it. Just needed something to do with my hands. Something normal. The store hummed around me. Ice machine running. Coolers buzzing. Coffee maker gurgling. Everything sounded right again. I kept the counter between me and the rest of the store. Didn't go near the red rectangle. Didn't go near the soda fountain. Just stayed where I was and kept my eyes on the door. I spent maybe 10 minutes doing nothing productive. Checked the cameras. Looked at the salt packet under the register. Walked to the back and pretended to organize the storage closet even though I had no idea what was supposed to go where. When I came back to the front, the door chime went off. A girl walked in. Teenage. Maybe 16 or 17. Oversized gray hoodie with the hood up. Dark jeans, sneakers that looked damp. She was dripping. Not soaked, but definitely wet. Little trails of water followed her across the tile from the door to the counter, and her sleeves had dark patches where moisture had seeped through. I glanced at the front windows. The parking lot looked bone dry. No puddles under the overhead lights, no sheen on the pavement. The sky had that flat, empty look you get in the desert at night, when there's no weather happening at all. I looked back at her, still dripping. She stopped about 3 feet from the counter and pushed her hood back a little. Straight, light brown hair, pale blue eyes, round face. She looked normal. Tired, maybe, but normal. "I found a wallet," she said. Her voice was soft, flat, but not in the same way the Atlas guys had been. Just quiet. "Out at pump 6. She pulled something from her hoodie pocket. A brown leather wallet, the kind that folds in half. Bifold, I think they're called. It looked worn, but not old. She held it in both hands. "Someone probably wants this back," she said. I didn't move. The register clock said 1:34. After 2 a.m., the rule said. This was before. But she was a teenage girl, and she was trying to give me a wallet, and I had a pretty good feeling this was the exact situation Rule 2 was talking about. I pulled the laminated card from my pocket and checked. Rule 2. If a teenage girl tries to leave a wallet on the counter after 2 a.m., take it to the back office immediately and do not open it. After 2. This was 1:34. I looked up at her. She was watching me. Patient. Not annoyed that I was reading a card instead of helping her. "You can take it," she said. "I don't need a reward or anything." I thought about Ethel's face when she'd told me to follow the rules exactly. No improvising. The rule said after 2 a.m. It didn't say anything about before 2. But it also didn't say teenage girls only existed after 2, and the whole reason you write a rule that specific is because the thing happens. I put the card back in my pocket. "You should take it to the state troopers," I said. "There's a post about 15 minutes west, or you can leave your contact info and I'll add it to the lost and found log." She didn't blink, just kept looking at me. "I'd rather leave it here," she said. "We don't usually hold wallets," I said. That wasn't true. I had no idea what we usually did, but it sounded reasonable. She stepped closer. Now she was maybe 2 feet from the counter. Close enough that I could see her hoodie up close. The fabric around her shoulders was definitely wet, darker than the rest. But there were no individual drops clinging to it. Just dampness, spread out evenly. "It'll be easier if you take it," she said. I reached under the counter and tapped the safe twice with my knuckles. 2 quick metallic knocks. I don't know why I did that. The card didn't say to. But when the Atlas guy had asked his question the second time, I'd gone for the salt and that had worked. The safe felt like the same kind of move. Practical. Specific. The kind of detail that mattered. Her gaze shifted. Not much, just a few inches to my left, like she was focusing on the air beside my shoulder instead of my face. It only lasted a second. Then her eyes came back to me. "I'll just leave it here," she said. She set the wallet on the counter between us, right in the center. Then she stepped back. I didn't touch it. "I can't accept that," I said. She tilted her head slightly. Still no expression, no frustration, no confusion, nothing. "It's not for you," she said. "It's lost property." I looked down at the wallet. It sat there looking completely normal. Brown leather, stitching along the edges, slight crease down the middle from being folded. I grabbed a pen from the cup next to the register. Cheap blue ballpoint with the pilot logo printed on the side. I leaned over the counter and used the pen to push the wallet toward the edge. It slid across the laminate easily. When it reached the edge, I gave it one more nudge and it tipped over and fell onto the floor behind the counter. Soft thud when it hit the tile. I straightened up and looked at her. She looked back. "Okay," she said. Then she turned and walked toward the door. I watched her the whole way. Her sneakers left faint wet prints on the tile, but they faded fast. She reached the door and it swung open without her touching the handle. Maybe she pushed it with her shoulder. Maybe it was just the way she leaned into it. The chime rang. She stepped outside and walked across the parking lot. Slow, steady pace. Not in a hurry. I moved to the front window and watched her through the glass. The wetness on her hoodie didn't move right. I couldn't explain it better than that. It was damp, sure. But when she walked, the fabric shifted, and the wet patches didn't ripple or drip or cling the way water does. They just stayed in place. Flat. Even. She walked past the fuel islands, past the two semis parked in the far spaces, out toward the access road. Then she was gone. I stayed at the window for another minute. The parking lot was empty. Dry pavement, no rain, no puddles, no sign anyone had been there. I walked back to the counter and looked down. The wallet was still on the floor where it had landed. About a foot to the left of the safe, face up, so I could see the leather grain and the stitching. I didn't pick it up. The rule said take it to the back office immediately, but that was only if it happened after 2 a.m., and this had been at 1:34, so maybe the rule didn't apply. Or maybe the rule applied anyway because the situation was close enough. Or maybe I'd already screwed it up by not taking it, and touching it now would make things worse. I left it there. I grabbed the cleaning rag from under the counter and walked to the coffee station, wiped down the counter even though it was already clean, checked the pots. They were still half full and fresh enough. I went to the condiment station and topped off the lids, straightened the stir sticks, opened the cup dispenser and pulled the stack forward so the edges lined up. My hands were shaking a little, so I kept them busy. I walked down the candy aisle and faced all the wrappers forward. Snickers, Reese's, Kit Kat. Pulled them to the front edge of the shelf so they looked full. When I got back to the counter, I checked the clock, 1:41. I looked at the red-taped rectangle by the soda fountain. Empty. But I felt watched. Not the way you feel watched when someone's staring at you. More like the feeling you get when you're alone in a house and you're pretty sure you're alone, but you can't quite convince yourself. I checked the cameras, cycled through all 4 angles. Front lot, fuel islands, side entrance, back delivery door. Nothing. I walked to the front window and looked out at the parking lot again. Still dry. Still empty. The feeling didn't go away. I restocked the cup lids again, even though I'd already done it. Organized the napkins, straightened the straw dispenser. Every time I glanced toward the soda fountain, the feeling got stronger. I kept my back to it and focused on the cups. At 2:36, I smelled pennies. Not the faint metallic scent you get from handling coins. This was thick, sharp. It came from the hallway leading back to the showers and crept forward through the store in a slow wave that made my throat tighten. I stepped away from the counter and looked toward the back. The hallway was empty. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. But the smell kept coming, spreading across the front of the store like something physical pushing through the air. I backed up to the register. My hand hit something solid on the counter, a small plastic radio I hadn't noticed before. Black casing, retractable antenna, old-school dial tuner. I didn't remember seeing it during training. Didn't remember Ethel mentioning it. I picked it up and turned it over. No dust. The battery compartment had fresh AA inside. The penny smell reached the register. My eyes watered. I clicked the radio on. Static hissed through the tiny speaker. I turned the dial, scanning through dead air and crackling white noise until I hit something around the middle of the AM band. A talk show host mid-sentence, his voice calm and conversational. "Calling from Tulsa, and you're on the air." The smell stopped moving forward. I held the radio and watched the hallway. The metallic scent didn't fade, but it didn't advance either. It stayed right where it was, like it hit an invisible wall at the edge of the front counter area. The radio host laughed. "Well, that's a new one. Hold on, let me..." I set the radio down next to the register and kept the volume low, just loud enough to hear. The smell didn't push any closer. I checked the clock. 2:38. A scraping sound pulled my attention back to the counter. The red stapler, same one I'd used earlier with the Atlas man, was sliding slowly toward the edge. Not fast, just a steady creep, metal base dragging across laminate with a faint grinding noise. I grabbed it and moved it back 6 inches, closer to the register. Then I watched it slide forward again, same speed, same angle, like the counter was tilted, except when I put my palm flat on the surface it felt completely level. I picked up the stapler and set it all the way back against the cigarette cage. It started moving again immediately, slow and deliberate, inching toward the edge. I left it, let it scrape forward while I checked the cameras. Front lot, empty. Fuel islands. 2 semis still parked in the far spaces, same as before. Side entrance, nothing. Back delivery door, nothing. When I came back to the counter, the stapler had moved another 3 inches. The talk radio host was introducing a caller from Nevada. His voice stayed calm and boring, the kind of late-night AM filler that sounds like it's been running on a loop since the 90s. But it kept the penny smell exactly where it was, stuck at the threshold between the hallway and the front area, not advancing. I grabbed the stapler again and shoved it into the cabinet under the counter. Closed the door, stood up. The scraping sound started again. I opened the cabinet. The stapler was sliding across the cabinet floor, same slow pace, heading toward the front corner. I shut the cabinet and stepped back. The radio host said something about weather patterns. A caller disagreed. I stopped listening to the words and just let the sound fill the space. The penny smell stayed where it was, thick and metallic and wrong, but contained. I wiped my hands on my work pants and checked the clock again. 2:51. The stapler kept scraping inside the cabinet, faint but constant. I walked to the front windows and looked outside. Dry pavement, empty pumps, no movement. The sky was flat black with no stars visible, just the orange-yellow glow from the overhead fuel island lights cutting harsh shadows across the lot. When I came back to the counter, I opened the cabinet again. The stapler had reached the front corner and stopped, just sitting there, motionless. I left it and checked the salt packet under the register. Still there. White paper, red letters. The radio cycled to a commercial, some guy selling water softeners. The penny smell didn't move. I stood behind the counter and waited. At 3:15, someone started pounding on the side door. Not knocking. Pounding. Hard and fast, like fists hammering sheet metal. I grabbed the laminated card from my pocket and checked Rule 5. If someone knocks on the side door between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m., check the camera first, and if you cannot see anyone, do not open the door. The pounding continued, urgent, rhythmic. I moved to the back office and checked the monitor. Camera 3 showed the side entrance, just the door under the exterior light surrounded by dark pavement. No person, no vehicle. The pounding got louder. I walked toward the side door, staying several feet back. The hallway still smelled like pennies, though the radio kept it from spreading. The door shook slightly with each impact. "Hey!" A man's voice muffled through metal. "I need help. My kid's throwing up in the car. I need to get her inside." I stopped walking. "Please, man, she's really sick. I just need some water in the bathroom." I stepped closer to the door. There was a narrow window at eye level, reinforced with wire mesh. I looked through it. A man stood outside. Around 5'9", heavy-set, dark hoodie pulled up over his head. His face was shadowed, but I could see stubble on his jaw, broad nose, brown eyes. He was looking straight at me. "Thank God," he said, voice clearer now. "Can you unlock this? She's in bad shape. I really need..." I looked at his feet. He was standing wrong. Not wrong like unbalanced. Wrong like the door wasn't where it should be. His stance was angled slightly left. Weight shifted, like he was facing something 2 feet to the side of the actual door frame. And his position, I couldn't explain it exactly, but it looked like he was standing on the wrong side of something, like there was a line I couldn't see, and he was on the far side of it, even though he was clearly right outside the door. It reminded me of the red tape, the rectangle by the soda fountain, the way the Atlas man had stood inside it. But the tape was inside the building, by the fountain, nowhere near this door. "Please," the man said. His voice cracked. "She's only 7. I just need help." My hand moved toward the keyring on my belt. Pure reflex. Someone's kid was sick. I stopped, looked at his stance again, the angle, the wrong position. Behind me, from the front counter, the radio host laughed. Mid-sentence, bright and sudden. The pounding stopped. Complete silence. The man outside didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there, weight angled wrong, staring through the wire mesh window. I backed up 3 steps and returned to the office. Checked camera 3. The feed showed nothing but black. Not static. Not the empty door under the light. Just solid black, like someone put a hand over the lens. I stared at the monitor. Camera 1 cycled in, front lot, empty. Camera 2, fuel islands, 2 semis. Camera 4, back delivery door, nothing. Camera 3, still black. I walked back to the hallway and looked through the door window. The man was gone. I pressed my face closer to the glass and checked left, then right. No one. No car. No movement. I checked the camera again, still black. The radio kept playing. Some caller talking about tax policy. I returned to the front counter and stood behind the register. My hands were shaking. I shoved them in my pockets. The penny smell was still there, stuck at the hallway threshold, not advancing. I checked the clock. 3:21. The store was too quiet. I could hear the radio, the coolers, the ice machine, but under that, nothing. No distant highway noise, no wind, no semis idling in the lot. Just the mechanical hum of the building and the talk show host's voice, flat and steady. I pulled the laminated card out again and read, Rule 4. At exactly 4:44 a.m., turn off all lobby lights for 1 minute, stand behind the counter, and do not look outside. I checked the clock again. 3:22. An hour and 22 minutes. I put the card back in my pocket and gripped the edge of the counter. The laminate was cool under my palms. The stapler stayed motionless in the cabinet corner. The penny smell stayed in place. The radio kept talking. I watched the clock. 3:23. I didn't want to be here at 4:44. Didn't want to know what happened when the lights went out. But I stayed behind the counter and kept my eyes on the register screen, watching the minutes tick forward. At 4:20 in the morning, the front door chimed. I looked up from the register where I'd been staring at the clock for the past hour, and a state trooper walked in. Tall, maybe 6'1", close-cropped black hair, clean uniform with a duty belt and polished boots. He stopped just inside the door and scanned the store once, methodical, like he was cataloging everything. "Who's working tonight?" he asked. His voice was calm, official, the kind of tone that should have been reassuring. "Just me," I said. He nodded and walked toward the counter. His eyes tracked left to the condiment station where the salt packets sat in their bin, then right to the radio, still playing low on the counter next to the register. He didn't react. Didn't ask why there was a random radio sitting there or why I looked like I'd been awake for 3 days straight. Just looked at them and kept walking. That bothered me a little. "Zachary Lawson," he said when he reached the counter. He didn't offer a hand. "State Patrol. Got a call about suspicious activity at this location." I hadn't called anyone. The panic button was still untouched under the counter. "I didn't report anything," I said. "Didn't say you did." He glanced at the radio again, then back at me. "You doing okay?" I opened my mouth to answer and realized I didn't know what to say. The penny smell was still stuck at the hallway threshold. The stapler was still motionless in the cabinet corner. Camera 3 was still showing solid black on the monitor and back, and the clock said 4:21, which meant 23 minutes until I had to turn off all the lights and stand here in the dark. "Yeah," I said. Trooper Lawson watched me for a second longer than felt normal. Then he said, "I can wait outside until sunrise if you want. Keep an eye on things." The relief hit me so hard I almost laughed. Someone official, someone with a gun and a radio and backup, someone who could see me and talk to me and wasn't dripping phantom water or asking the same question twice. "That'd be good," I said. "Thanks." He nodded once and turned toward the door. I came out from behind the counter and walked with him across the tile, past the red rectangle by the soda fountain. Empty. Still empty. The trooper's boots made solid sounds on the floor, normal and real, and I focused on that. We reached the front doors, and he pushed through first. The chime rang. I stepped out after him into the cool desert air, and the parking lot lights flickered. Just once. A quick dip and surge. I looked toward the curb where his cruiser should have been parked. Nothing. The lot was empty. Flat pavement. Fuel islands with their orange-yellow glow. 2 semis in the far spaces. No black and white, no light bar, no vehicle at all. I stopped walking. Trooper Lawson turned back and looked at me. His expression didn't change. "The lot's empty," he said. Calm, matter of fact. "It always was." He said it like I was the one confused. Like I'd imagined him driving up and parking and walking inside through a door that required a vehicle to reach in the first place. I took a step back toward the entrance. "You didn't drive here," I said. "No." "Then how?" "I've been here the whole time." He tilted his head slightly. "You just didn't see me yet." The parking lot lights flickered again. Longer this time. When they came back up, Trooper Lawson was still standing there, 3 feet from the door, hands resting easy on his belt, watching me. I turned and walked back inside, fast. The chime rang behind me and I grabbed the door and pulled it shut, flipping the lock with shaking hands. The deadbolt clicked into place. The radio on the counter clicked off. Not static, not a fade, just off. Instant silence where the talk show host had been mid-sentence. The penny smell surged forward. It hit me like a wall, thick and sharp and metallic, flooding out from the hallway and spreading across the front counter area in one heavy wave. I backed up against the cigarette cage and checked the wall clock above the coffee station. 4:38, 6 minutes. The clock's second hand moved forward. Slow. Too slow. Like it was dragging itself through something thick. I pulled the laminated card from my pocket and read Rule 4 again, even though I'd memorized it an hour ago. At exactly 4:44 a.m., turn off all lobby lights for 1 minute. Stand behind the counter. And do not look outside. I shoved the card back in my pocket and looked at the front doors. Condensation was forming on the glass. Slow trails of moisture creeping down from the top edge, fogging the surface from the outside in. I could see the parking lot through it, blurred and warped, and I could see the trooper-shaped outline still standing close to the door. Not moving, just standing there, staying close. The second hand on the clock dragged forward. 4:40, 4:41, 4:42. I checked the salt packet under the register. Still there. I checked the cabinet. The stapler sat motionless in the front corner. I checked the cameras and found camera 3 still showing solid black. But the others were normal. Front lot empty. Fuel islands quiet. Back door clear. 4:43. I moved behind the register and put my hand on the light switches mounted on the wall behind the counter. 3 toggles. One for the fuel island overheads. One for the back offices and storage. One for the main lobby. I rested my fingers on the third switch and watched the clock. The second hand crept past the 12. 4:44. I flipped the switch. The lobby went dark. Not complete. The glow from the fuel islands outside came through the windows, orange and faint, and the exit signs over the bathrooms stayed lit. But the overheads were off, the fluorescents silent, and the shadows filled in thick around the edges. I started counting. 1, 2, 3. The red tape around the rectangle by the soda fountain started glowing, pale blue. Soft at first, then brighter, like someone had run a highlighter along the edges and hit it with a black light. The glow spread up from the floor, illuminating the tape in a thin line that marked the boundary clear and sharp. I understood. It was a boundary, a line something couldn't cross. The Atlas man had appeared inside it and couldn't leave until I gave him the receipt. The girl had stayed outside it. The stapler had tried to move toward it but couldn't make it past the counter. Something flat and quick skittered along the edge of the glowing tape. I couldn't see it clearly, just movement. Low to the ground, fast, sliding along the line like it was testing for a gap. It circled the rectangle once, twice, and stopped at the corner nearest the counter. It didn't cross. 15, 16, 17. A thump came from behind the counter. I looked down. The wallet, the one the girl had dropped. It was thumping against the inside of the trash can I'd shoved it into an hour ago. Rhythmic, steady. It matched my pulse. Thump, thump, thump. 23, 24. I looked at the front doors. The condensation was thick now, almost opaque, and through it I could see the outline leaning in close, pressed against the glass. The shape was wrong. Shoulders too wide, head too narrow, and where the mouth should have been there was a slot. Packed with salt crystals. I could see them through the fog, small and white and gleaming, crammed into the opening, spilling slightly at the edges. 31, 32. The thing along the tape skittered again, faster now, testing the boundary in short bursts. The wallet thumped louder. The shape outside pressed harder against the glass, and the condensation ran in thick rivulets. 45, 46. My hand was still on the light switch. I kept counting. 50, 51, 52. The glow from the tape brightened. The skittering thing moved in a blur. The wallet slammed against the trash can hard enough to tip it. 58, 59, 60. I flipped the switch. The lobby lights came on, bright and instant and fluorescent. The glow vanished. The thing along the tape disappeared. The wallet went silent. The shape outside cracked. I heard it through the glass. A A sharp splitting sound, like ice breaking, and the outline fractured into pieces. Dry flakes. They slid down the door in a small cascade and piled at the base, pale and brittle. The store's normal hum returned. The coolers, the ice machine, the coffee maker gurgling behind me. Everything mechanical and ordinary and steady. I stood behind the counter and didn't move for a full minute. At 5:30, the radio came back on by itself. Same station. AM talk. The host was introducing a caller from Montana. I didn't touch it. Just let it play. The penny smell was gone. Completely. I walked to the hallway threshold and checked. Nothing. Just the faint industrial cleaner scent and old coffee. I checked the cameras. All 4 were working. Camera 3 showed the side entrance under the exterior light. Empty. Normal. I checked the trash can. The wallet was inside, motionless. I checked the red tape. It looked normal. Just tape. No glow. At 6:12, the sky outside started turning gray at the edges. Dawn. Actual dawn. The front door unlocked, and Ethel walked in. She looked tired. Her jacket was zipped up and her key ring was already in her hand. She stopped just inside the door and looked at me, then at the radio, then at the pile of pale flakes at the base of the glass. "You're still here," she said. "Yeah." She walked to the counter and set her keys down. I got stuck at home. Couldn't leave until sunrise. I didn't ask why. She looked at the radio, still playing low, then back at me. "The rules aren't superstition," she said. "You know that now." "Yeah." She nodded once. Then she saw the flakes and crouched down next to the door, studying them without touching. "What was it?" "Trooper," I said. "I think." She stood and walked behind the counter, pulling a disposable coffee cup from the stack and handing it to me. "Sweep them up. Add water. They'll dissolve." I grabbed the small broom from the back and swept the flakes into the cup. They were light, brittle. They crumbled slightly under the bristles. I carried the cup to the sink behind the counter and ran water over them. They dissolved fast, clear brine. No residue, just salt water. I set the cup on the counter next to the register. Ethel looked at it, then at me. "You did good." I didn't feel good. I felt like I'd spent 8 hours in a place that shouldn't exist, following rules that shouldn't work, and I'd survived by luck and salt packets. I clocked out at 6:19. Ethel took my place behind the register, and I grabbed my jacket from the hook and back. When I came back out, she was pouring the brine down the sink. "See you tomorrow," she said. I walked out the front doors into full daylight. The parking lot was dry, normal. 2 semis were still parked in the far spaces, and a sedan was pulling up to pump 3. The sky was pale blue and empty. I got in my Honda and sat there for a minute. Then I drove back to Benny's place, went inside, and slept for 6 hours straight. I didn't come back for another shift, not the next night, not the one after. Ethel called twice and left voicemails asking if I was okay, and I didn't return them. Kathy called once from the main office and said I'd be marked as a no-call, no-show and terminated if I didn't respond within 24 hours. I didn't respond. I lost the job. The one that was supposed to save me. The one that was supposed to cover first month, last month deposit. The one that was supposed to fix everything. But I wasn't going back to that counter at 4:44 in the morning, not for any amount of money. That was it.